Okay, I'm going to show you a syllogism. And a syllogism is just merely, it's a deductive argument. And the basic syllogism, there's two premises and one conclusion. Okay, so you're going to have three propositions total. This is the syllogism. And so I'm just going to use the basic syllogism, the one that you'll find most often. It's all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, or so, Socrates is mortal. Now, when you read this thing, it should sound just common sense to you. It should flow. All right? You could see from this that this conclusion, Socrates is mortal, is necessarily true here. Okay, it's necessary, and it necessarily follows from these premises. All right, so we're just going to break down this syllogism right here. This syllogism, by the way, is what they call the bullseye syllogism. It is the most common syllogism. All right, you say syllogisms every day. The thing is you normally don't say all the premises every day. Okay? Normally, when you say an argument, you don't say both premises. You just say like one, and then you give the conclusion. Or sometimes you don't even give the conclusion, you just say the premises, right? You say something like, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. So what do you think? Right? I didn't even say the conclusion, right? You just naturally know what it is. So that's how we use these just every day. We're doing this, right? But let's break this down. In this first premise right here, we have two terms. We have men and we have mortal. Okay, that's the matter. That's what we call the matter. Matter changes. Okay, the form of this proposition, this is an A proposition right here. The form is all in R. Okay, just to be clear. So, this proposition right here is also an A statement, according to the logic of Aristotle, because it's all Socrates is a man. And so this one right here is also an A statement. So therefore, so all Socrates is mortal. Now, the first thing we want to look at, now that I've just explained what type of propositions they are, the first thing we want to look at when you're examining an argument is the conclusion. That goes for this, and it also goes for when you're reading a book and you want to analyze an argument or find the argument, you find the conclusion. And then from there, you see the reasons. If you don't know what the conclusion is, you're definitely not going to know what the reasons are. So we find the conclusion first. And we're going to break down right now why you would do that. So in the conclusion, we have two terms. We have Socrates and we have mortal. Okay, Socrates, when it's the subject of a conclusion, so it's the subject term is what we would call it. This is the minor term. The minor term. So the subject of a conclusion is always the minor term. Okay, this is the predicate of the conclusion. Okay, this is what we call the major term. Okay? So the predicate of a conclusion is always the major term. Okay? So all we got to do is find out where this term is at right here. This minor term. Where is it at in the premises? First of all, you would be looking for the minor term just naturally. You naturally do this, by the way. You would be looking for the minor term, and that's how you would know that you have a premise. Okay? Because when you're reading a real book, right, it's not nice and pretty. It's not organized well for you. Right? It's not just easy to see most of the time. You have to read over and over again. You're investigating. You're looking. So we see right here that the minor term is in this second premise right here. Socrates. This is the minor term. So we have the minor term in the second premise. And what we've also found at this point, this happens right away. What we've also found when we located the minor term is this term over here, known as the middle term. Okay? We have found the middle term. And that's very important to find that. Okay, because I'll explain that more in a little bit. So we found the minor term, and we also have located the middle term. So this premise where we found the minor term is known as the minor premise. Okay, I'm not going to write that down, but you should know that. That's the minor premise. Now I'm going to look for the major term, which is mortal. Okay, lo and behold, it's right here in the first premise. See it? It's right here. Mortal. And look over here at the other term in this premise, this first premise. It happens to be the middle term. Okay? This argument, by the way, I told you it's a bullseye syllogism. It's valid. It has good form, in other words. So there's nothing wrong with this argument. This is how an argument should be. It should have good form. So an argument that has good form will have all these elements that I'm telling you right now. Okay? So we have the middle term right here. And here we have the major term. Excuse me. This is the major term. And over here we have the middle term. So, middle term, middle term. Notice that the middle term appears twice in the premises. Okay, it appears right here and appears right here. So guess what this is called? This is called the major premise. Okay, so you have the major premise, the minor premise, and the conclusion. They don't have to be in this order, by the way. If I put this premise right here on top of this one, it would still be the minor premise. Listen, if I put this minor premise, if I erased it from this board and I wrote it on the wall next door neighbor, at the next door neighbor's house, it would still be the minor premise. Okay? It doesn't matter where it's at, because when you're reading a book, you have the conclusion. You found the conclusion. The minor premise or the major premise, who knows where they're at? They could be on a different page. Hopefully they're not, but they could be. Does that change the fact that they're the minor premise or the major premise? No. What makes this the minor premise is that it has the minor term and it has the middle term. What makes this the major premise is that it has the major term, mortal, and the middle term, man. Okay, man and man, same thing. Okay. So now, I want you to notice something about this syllogism here, now that we pointed out all the terms. Notice that something's gone in the conclusion. What term is not present in the conclusion? The middle term. The middle term is the mediator. Okay, the middle term, the job of the middle term is to join these two terms together. And once it has done its job, it leaves. Okay, it is the mediator. This is why this is called, the type of arguing it is called mediated inference. Okay, because it has a mediator. Like a lot of people have been to a mediator before. A mediator is somebody who, sometimes when people are getting divorced or something like this, they go to a mediator. Because the mediator will bring the two parties together, and divvy out what needs to be divvied out, reconcile in some way, right? So that's the job of the mediator. And then once the mediator has, maybe brought the ex-wife, ex-husband together in order to split their stuff or whatever, Once the mediator has brought those two together, I mean, what does the mediator do? Does the mediator like go home with the wife? Of course not. That would be a horrible mediator. The mediator leaves. Okay, the job is over for the mediator. It's done his job. He's brought the two together, reconciliation, and then leaves. That's what's going on here. The mediator has brought these two terms together, and then is gone. So you're not going to find the middle term, the mediator, in the conclusion. You're not going to find that. You're going to find it if you have an invalid argument. Okay, but not in a valid argument. In a valid argument, the middle term is not going to be in the conclusion. Okay? So, what we have here is, just to keep in mind, is in a basic syllogism, the most basic, we have two premises, the major premise, minor premise, and these could be switched around. It's still going to be the same. And then you have the conclusion. And even the conclusion, if I decided to put this conclusion on top, do you think that would change the fundamentals of this argument? No, it wouldn't. This would still be the conclusion, no matter where I put it. Okay? So that's the basics of the syllogism.